Professor Moan, many years ago you started with research into the dangers of UV radiation, into the bad sun, so to speak, and by doing so you discovered the good sun. In your recent research you occasionally contradict conventional wisdom. What was your motivation?
The motivation was in fact to be honest and to say what you find. And then I hit upon the idea to look at cancer survival as a function of the time of the year when you get it. In other words, does the vitamin D level in your blood play any role for your chance to survive cancer? And to my big surprise, and I think also to the big surprise of the Norwegian Cancer Registry, we found that yes, there is a difference. There's a significant difference for many cancers. If you start the therapy, get the diagnosis, start the therapy in summer and autumn, when you have approximately 30, on the average, 30-40% more vitamin D than in the winter. So if you start the therapy then, in the good season, you have up to 20% larger chance to survive for 3 years than if you start in the winter season.
Standard advice of dermatologists and the media is to avoid the midday sun in order to protect your skin from skin cancer. You disagree. Why?
My research and many other people's research have shown that it's UVA, the long wavelengths part of the of the UV spectrum from the sun. UVA plays a major role in the case of the malignant melanoma, the most dangerous form of skin cancer. So the UVA is most likely an important factor, while UVB is all what you need to make vitamin D. In other words, the spectrum, the part of the solar radiation that makes vitamin D is different from that part that makes skin cancer. So, because these two parts of solar radiation has a different scattering through the atmosphere, it is a great difference how UVA and UVB vary throughout the day with the solar height. UVB is very much more scattered, so it comes from everywhere, more or less. This means that it is halved. It's half of the noon value at about 2:30 to 3 o'clock. Then you have reduced your vitamin D formation in your skin by 50%. Now, what about the UVA and the melanoma risk? UVA is not reduced to the half before 6 o'clock. 3 hours later in the afternoon. This means that if you follow the rules of many authorities to stay away from the sun in the noontime and wait until 4 o'clock to go to the sun, that is the best way to get a melanoma, because then you have absolutely no vitamin D and you have a lot of the UVA, which may give skin cancer.
You found out that people with higher UV exposition had a better chance to survive common cancers than people with less sun exposition. Does that mean that the sun can protect against cancers, even skin cancers?
Does the vitamin D level in your blood play any role for your chance to survive cancer? And to my big surprise, and I think also to the big surprise of the Norwegian Cancer Registry, we found that yes, there is a difference. There's a significant difference for many cancers. If you start the therapy, get the diagnosis, start the therapy in summer and autumn, when you have approximately 30, on the average, 30-40% more vitamin D than in the winter. So if you start the therapy then, in the good season, you have up to 20% larger chance to survive for 3 years than if you start in the winter season. What we have found is that about 13 of the most important internal cancers are related to the low vitamin D status. So a low vitamin D status is a risk factor for these. When you come to the skin cancer, it is more difficult. What I can say about the skin cancer is that we have some places on the body where the sun never shines. That can be around, where you cover yourself usually. And also in the internal part of the eye. Very little UVB comes to that place. It seems, in many studies, including ours from Norway, it seems that in those parts of the body which the sun doesn't shine on, then the sun that is shining on other parts of the body is protecting. Because probably the vitamin D level is higher in those who are a lot out in the sun. And they get, because of that, they get lower risk of getting eye melanoma in the internal eye and also in the shielded parts of the body. So the sun can definitely make skin melanomas and it can protect against them. So it is a dual effect in a way.
So we are talking about the good and the bad sun.
Absolutely. But everything is that. Almost every factor in life. Think you go out in the car. It's a risk factor, definitely, but nevertheless everyone does so.
Some studies maintain that vitamin D has a life-saving quality. Higher vitamin D level means lower mortality risk. Does that mean he who tans lives longer?
But it seems to me that since the wavelengths of the solar spectrum that makes tanning, this is also the UV, mainly the UVB. It also makes vitamin D. And vitamin D is coupled to a slower aging. That has been shown. I think it's because of the protective role, the antioxidant role of vitamin D that will protect the chromosomes so that the telomeres of the chromosomes are more protected and do not shorten as fast among people who have a lot of vitamin D as it does among people who have low vitamin D. So in a way, vitamin D protects you from dying to some extent, of course.
There are different groups in society with different risks of vitamin D deficiency. Which are those? Why? How can we provide them with sufficient vitamin D?
I think, first of all, some young people, some groups of young people, those who never are outdoor. And we should remind ourselves now that humans started to walk on 2 feet in Africa, maybe as far back as several million years. And they were black. They were black to protect themselves probably against breakdown of products in the blood. Probably not so much skin cancer, but nevertheless, when they moved northwards, and so humans have done many times, always they got white because they needed more vitamin D, simply more sun and more vitamin D. So this is a Darwinian view which is very hard to act against, that humans get white when they need more sun, because white skin needs only a sixth of the dose that black skin would need to give enough vitamin D. In other words, a black man coming to Norway needs to be in the sun 6 times longer than a white Norwegian.
How much vitamin D and how much sun do we really need?
I think some people have done some mistakes in calculating that. When saying that it is enough to be out in the sun for a few minutes with the face and the hands, I think that's far too little really. Because then you must be in equatorial sun in the middle of the day and so on. If you are in the northern countries and in Germany and wherever you are in Europe, then you have to be out quite much more. I think you need to have a dose of approximately maybe a third or a quarter of an MED to a significant part of the body, such as, for instance, you have a short pair of trousers or something like that. So you need more than people have thought, even of the sun. And when you think of how people used to live, people used to be outdoor, people used to work outdoor, people used to walk outdoor, and usually they took off their clothes, especially in the middle of the day in the summer. It was exactly what everyone did. And now, what do they do now? They play computers. So in Norway, for instance, children of 15 years spend more than 4 hours every day in front of a computer, and the rest of the day they play football indoor or something indoor. So I think that the young people now get much less, in fact, sun than they used to get.
What about the vitamin D winter, when no vitamin D can be generated in the skin? Could sunbeds solve that problem?
Because a proper sunbed, used properly in the winter, would be an absolutely good thing. I think it is good for us who originate from the equator, where you get vitamin D throughout the year. Probably people there have a flat vitamin D level, not like us, up and down with the season. I think the best for the body is to have a stable level throughout. And the way to achieve that would be to have proper sunbeds used properly in the winter. Otherwise, we are lucky in Norway, especially in northern Norway, because we have the cod season with liver just in the winter.
Could the sun, as a free agent, could vitamin D contribute to lighten the financial burden of our health systems?
In my mind, there is no doubt about that. And even big health authorities, like in the US and in England, have had times when they have really asked people to go out for health. So it has changed because the focus has been put only on skin cancer. After all, 250 deaths of skin cancer in a big country, in a country like Norway, is not an immense thing when you think that there are 10s and 20 times more of other cancers deaths. So, upon the whole, I think that the authorities would benefit economically from having people more outdoor, walking more, playing more football outdoor, whatever they would do, but exposing their skin in a natural way for humans.
And what about sunbed use?
There is no big difference in the type of radiation from the sun and from the sunbeds, except, as I said, the UVA. And those people who say that it is no vitamin D to get from sunbeds, they are absolutely wrong. They have to read the literature, and they see that it's not only my group have shown it in 3 big papers, but it is shown in Denmark, it's shown in America, in everyone who tries that experiment. And it's not a difficult experiment. It's just to go to the sunbed saloons and ask to have some blood samples from those who use the sunbeds and those who don't. And you will see that sunbed use will increase the vitamin D, typically in the winter time. Moderate use will increase the vitamin D to a summer level in the middle of the winter. So it is absolutely wrong to say that sunbeds do not make vitamin D. They indeed do.